Got to hand it to Missouri Governor Mike Parson on a Tuesday morning as we get this show started. The governor of Missouri announced yesterday that the states will not pay for the damages of 3 state senators being sued for defamation if found guilty. So this story, and good on the governor for that, this story ties back to the Chiefs Super Bowl parade shooting, where, of course, this now we know him as an Olathe man. His name is Denton Loudermill. The guy was at the parade, got a little drunk, and he got arrested. He was in the red jumpsuit, and his image gets plastered all over the internet, social media. I mean, this guy, you couldn't Google a story about this parade and not find his face. And then what happened? Well, made-up social media accounts insisted that this man was an illegal immigrant and that he was the shooter. And because we live in a time when people are so dumb that they see something on social media, it confirms their bias, and they go, well, it must be true. You had this thing blow up. You had thousands and thousands of people share this. It got millions and millions of views. And it was a lie. And unfortunately, we had 3 members of the Missouri State Senate who also found themselves sharing this lie. And it's too bad because, you know, a couple of those senators, by the way, are local here to the Kansas City area, Denny Hoskins and Rick Bratton. And, I think generally speaking, when it comes to policy, they're good guys that do a good job. But, man, I mean, it is just the classic example of not sharing things on social media just because they confirm your bias without checking for 2 seconds to find out whether or not it's true. That's all it takes. But in a world where people are desperate for clicks and desperate for attention, they will do whatever. So they share this, social media post claiming that Denton Loudermill is an illegal alien shooter and he was none of the above. And now he's suing him. He's going after him. And Andrew Bailey is the attorney general, and they are being represented by the attorney general. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But yesterday we had on the attorney general, name is Andrew Bailey, and I asked him about this towards the end of our conversation. And, you tell me whether or not you feel satisfied with the answers. Why are you going ahead with this?
Look, Pete, there's a statute that indemnifies state employees and state officials against lawsuits. And at the end of the day, there's a jurisdictional question. We don't believe that the law supports the notion that fleet in Missouri should land you in a federal court in another state. And that's what we're litigating. That's what the statute requires. And I'm sorry that other people disagree with that. If they don't like it, they should change the statute. And we shouldn't be politicizing people's right to legal counsel and representation under the due process clause.
So basically, Missouri residents can unfairly attack Kansas residents if they are in public office, and the taxpayer will defend those Missouri politicians?
There are issues of state law that guide these decisions, and those issues need to be litigated in court and get an answer from the court.
You're saying you have no choice but to defend these senators?
I believe that the statute requires a defense, especially when there's these jurisdictional questions that need to be answered. We don't want foreign jurisdictions taking personal jurisdiction over Missouri officials or subject matter jurisdiction and having the final say over Missouri law without the state of Missouri having a say in that.
But if they're doing it from their personal X accounts, I mean, why can't they just find their own legal backing just like any other resident of Missouri would do if they're sued by somebody in Kansas?
Yeah, the statute says that anything that if there's a reasonable basis to believe that what was said is in connection with their office, then the state provides defense for that. So that's the issue. Again, the court's going to figure that out.
Do you think that's good law?
I think that the General Assembly makes the law, not the Attorney General's office.
That was Andrew Bailey on this show yesterday. I think that's completely ridiculous. And I like Andrew Bailey. I think he's a really good attorney general. But I think this notion that you get protected by the state, protected by you, the taxpayer, because you send out stupid tweets from your social media accounts is one of the dumbest things that I've ever seen in the last few years doing this show. The notion that you, driving to work right now on the Missouri side of the state line, a penny of your tax dollars will go to defend politicians who don't know how to properly use social media, to me is gross. And if the Attorney General thinks that the law requires him to do this, I guess so be it. But something tells me that there could be a way to say, you know what, was this really in their official capacity? Was it? That's my question. How is it in their official capacity? What is a man who they call an illegal immigrant, who is not an illegal immigrant, who they lie about, why is that in their official capacity? It had nothing to do with law that was being pursued in the state of Missouri, right? It had nothing to do with any of that.
Wouldn't be public safety. He was already being detained for his issue, his actual issue.
He was arrested.
Right. So he wasn't on the loose.
No.
No bolo.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not like he's someone who's, out running around. They're trying to figure out where he is and what to do, and then they end up lying about him. He was in handcuffs. No one's safety was on the line here. I just find it to be disgraceful that anyone in this state has to pay a dime towards the legal defense of politicians, because you know what else that does? That opens up the door to politicians being protected and saying whatever they want about private citizens, knowing that full well, apparently the state of Missouri has to protect them. This is not about politics. All these people are Republicans. I like them all, at different levels and different amounts. So it's not about that, but it's about what is right. Leave the politics out of it. Just because, they're members of the supposed Missouri Freedom Caucus, just because, someone's further right than somebody else, leave that out of it. Strip that away for a second. Is this the right way to pursue people at the state level? Do you want a situation where your attorney general is defending somebody who is attacking private citizens inaccurately? What if that was you? What if politicians were attacking you and lying about you? And then your own, your attorney general is potentially defending said individuals. And the idea that Denton Loudermill, or the idea that this is happening because Denton Loudermill is a Kansas resident, it sounds to me like it might be different, if I'm understanding this right, if he was an Independence resident, if he was a resident of Lee Summit, because then it wouldn't be a foreign jurisdiction. Maybe, but that doesn't make it right. It doesn't. And you have Mike Parson coming out yesterday in a statement and saying that the state will not pay for the damages of the 3 senators being sued for defamation if found guilty. The senators are being represented by the Attorney General, which, of course, Mike Parson previously spoke out against. And think about this, too. The Attorney General's office, there's only so much bandwidth. They got a lot to do. They're doing a lot of good things, when it comes to the Biden administration and elsewhere. It's a zero-sum game. Every ounce of time they're taking away from doing something like that matters is being spent on something like this. And that in and of itself is just utterly ridiculous. So Mike Parson, by the way, called this out last week on this show. And if you missed it, we'll play for you what he had to say here coming up on 95.7 FM, 913-408-7957. If you're a Missouri resident in particular, I want to hear from you on this. Is this what you want your attorney general spending money on? And is this where you want a dime of your taxpayer money's going? 913-408-7957. That's our studio line. That's our text line here on KCMO. Bottom of the hour at 6:35, Bill Donahue, president of the Catholic League, is going to be here out of New York to talk a little Harrison Butker with us on KCMO. 6:20. It is great to be kicking off another day with you on KCMO. We've got Bill Donahue from the Catholic League. He's the president of the operation. Coming up in 15 minutes, they've laid into the NFL in a letter they put out over the weekend. And Bill's going to be here at 6:35 on KCMO Talk Radio. Our friend Harris Faulkner from Fox News also joining us in the 8 o'clock hour this morning. So make sure you're streaming at KCMOTalkRadio.com if you're at the office by then. So Governor Mike Parson, let me play for you what he said on this show last week when I asked him about the Attorney General of the state of Missouri, Andrew Bailey, electing to defend 3 Missouri senators who called this innocent man in Olathe an illegal immigrant shooter from the Super Bowl parade. He was none of the above. They shared a social media post suggesting he was. They are now getting sued by this Olathe man, Denton Loudermill. You heard from the AG a few minutes ago explaining why he's doing this and why he's going about, defending them. He says he basically has to by state law. And by the way, there's a lot of dumb state laws out there. I'd change this one tomorrow. I mean, you're telling me now people in elected office, great way to get free attorneys, by the way. Why pay for your own legal defense when you can run for office and soak the taxpayer for it? That's a heck of a deal. I'm going to run for office just to have free, free attorneys. That sounds pretty good. Basically a legal defense fund that you can tap into at any given point in time. In most cases, at least. Ridiculous cases like this. If I post dumb things on social media, don't worry, the taxpayers got my back. So Mike Parson announcing yesterday that the legal fees, if there are any, when it comes to any settlements, cost of damages that may result from the defamation lawsuit that was filed by this Olathe man against these 3 state senators in Missouri, the state will not cover the cost of damages. Missouri taxpayers will not cover the cost of damages. Good. Now, what's interesting is I'd like to hear that from the Missouri Freedom Caucus. Could they put out a statement? They bill themselves as the high and mighty, we are the most responsible group when it comes to protecting the taxpayers' money. Where are they at on this? Huh? Oh, suddenly the taxpayer money is not as important when it comes to defending their sorry asses. Oh, I see how this goes now. Okay, got it. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, you bunch of damn hypocrites. Here's the governor of Missouri on this show last week.
Well, probably anything I'll say too much, but here's what I want to tell you. The Attorney General's wrong on defending these guys. I know they're trying to say there's some statute out there that says they got to defend legislators. And I get them defending them because it's a Kansas lawsuit versus a Missouri. I get that. But this guy absolutely, Pete, did nothing wrong other than he's drinking beer, went to a parade, and he's a minority. That is the only crime he committed, which is no crime. And for these people to talk about being Freedom Caucus people, the only freedom they were worried about was their own. This guy did absolutely nothing wrong. And for us to try to defend people, politicians, look, we don't get a free pass on everything. We need to be held accountable, and we should be at a higher standard. But it's frustrating that where we've got to on this, those guys wanted to make a political splash is what they wanted to do. And look, they ought to be accountable for it, just like anybody else would be. But to declare this guy, to be an illegal, or to insinuate he's an illegal, to insinuate maybe he was the shooter, I mean, man, that's over the top serious stuff. You're talking about an everyday citizen.
Is there anything your office, plans to do on that front with the Attorney General now saying he's going to defend them in this case?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. We got General Counsel looking at this, and we're going to do what we can. Look, man, I love Andrew Bailey. He's my guy. He's worked for me. But look, that doesn't mean you get a free pass all the time. I mean, I think the decision he's making is wrong, and I think what he's going to try to defend is saying, well, the statute tells me I have to do it. I don't want to do it, but the statute tells me I have to do it. But I'll let him speak for himself on that. But look, you can't go out there and attack private citizens. If we haven't learned anything what the federal government's been doing over the last several years when it comes to private citizens, we should have learned our lesson. And just because you claim to be, part of a group or something says all of a sudden you have the right to take away other people's freedoms as long as we're not messing with you. It's frustrating.
That was Governor Mike Parson on this show last week. And then, of course, yesterday it comes out that he says the state, he has ordered that the state not pay any of the costs of damages that may result from a defamation lawsuit filed against the 3 state senators who called this Kansas man an illegal immigrant. Now, he said it's going to need my approval or a court order. He said, I cannot justify money spent in this way. And he went on to say, I love Andrew Bailey. And I like him a lot, too. I mean, I've met him. I've had him on the show a bunch. I think he's really good at his job. But listen, it's, it's the old saying of, if you agree with a politician 100% of the time, there's probably something wrong with you. Like, you don't agree with your spouse 100% of the time. There should not be a politician you agree with 100% of the time. That's called a cult. All right? So, I can think Andrew Bailey is a really good attorney general, and he would make a great attorney general for the next 4 years if he does end up winning the race. But that brings me to the politics of this, too. I just wonder how much of this is political in nature. Now, follow me here on this, because I know this is not something that's getting a lot of attention right now. It will the next couple of months. But Andrew Bailey was appointed by the governor to this role of attorney general. It was held by Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt won the U.S. Senate race last year. Someone had to become the attorney general. Andrew Bailey was working for Governor Parson, and he got appointed attorney general. But he's got to run for office this year. He's got to run for election. And he's up against this guy, Will Scharf. Will Scharf wants to be, he's a Republican too, the next Missouri attorney general. Will Scharf has done legal work for Donald Trump. He's going to have an enormous amount of money behind him whenever he decides to roll it out. And this race in the primary could be closer than a lot of people think it's going to be. I know you're going to sit there and say, oh, my goodness, you're talking about an attorney general's primary. Who cares? I get it, but I'm bringing this up because a part of me wonders if the politics of this are going to ultimately end up playing a role and are playing a role in some of the decision-making from Andrew Bailey's office. I don't want to think of it that way, but trust me, politics make politicians do stupid things sometimes or do things that cover their own rear ends. And if there's this belief that, man, what's the Missouri Freedom Caucus going to do? Could these guys, potentially endorse my opponent? What's the best play? Have those conversations been had? No one's going to admit to any of this, right? Attorney General's not going to be like, I want to make sure those guys have my back here. And the Freedom Caucus is not going to come out and say, we told the AG he better have our backs here legally. If not, we're endorsing his opponent. No one's ever going to say this. But it would be naive to at least not have the conversation that there's some thought around it. And that's where, the politics of everything potentially could play a role in this conversation. You tell me if this is the place you'd take a first date here in Kansas City. And I saw this in the Kansas City Star when they're not writing stories about how the Chiefs should hire women to be their kickers for the upcoming season. They're writing stuff like this. But at least this is factually accurate. I'll give them that much. Chiefs rookie Louis Rees-Zammit. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that totally correct.
I believe you are.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
nailed it.
All right. I nailed it. Very good. We're off to a great start here. So he's the rugby player that the Chiefs have brought over to potentially play this like wide receiver, running back role. Mark was breaking it down.
It's kind of a
me.
specialist thing. He's one of those guys you get on the team. If you're going to make the team, you better be able to catch the ball as it comes down from very high.
Well, I'm happy for him.
Kickoff punts and
he's he's a sharp-looking young man. He's 23 years old, nice jawline, the whole deal. So apparently he is dating a model named Xandra Pohl. Now, she was in Sports Illustrated, and she's a Sports Illustrated rookie, is what they call them. Now, you're probably wondering, since Sports Illustrated does not just put really attractive women in the swimsuit issue anymore, as we well know, Xandra Pohl is a woman. That's important to note for the swimsuit issue. It's crazy to say that we live in a world where I should confirm that it is actually a woman who was in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, but she is a woman, and she is not one of the, shall we say, inclusive women. Now they put obese people in the swimsuit edition as if anyone finds that attractive, but that's what they do. But no, she is like a traditional Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, as I see Mark typing away on his computer there, and definitely Google imaging. I can see you in there. I mean, I can't see your screen, but I saw you just suddenly break out the keyboard, Mark, and something tells me you did a quick Google image.
I'm actually looking at Lewis right now.
Oh!
John can confirm.
Can confirm. He's got a
Are you
poster
kidding
up.
me?
It's a hype poster. Yeah,
I should have known. Gosh, nothing turns Mark on like a man in a football jersey, I'll tell you. Anyway, so he apparently took Xandra on a first date here in Kansas City. They're connected. They're dating. He's 23, she's 22. How they met each other, I don't know. And where did they go? They went to two places. Liberty Memorial, check, good call, nice picture opportunity, nice photo op, the whole thing. But then he also took her to Worlds of Fun. Now, that's dicey. And the reason he took her to Worlds of Fun is because Worlds of Fun posted a photo of him and her in the front row of one of the roller coasters, if you haven't seen it. So they're in the front row of a roller coaster at Worlds of Fun. Now, that is dicey. I've been with Kate for 15 years now, and we have never been not only on a roller coaster, we've been to an amusement, not even an amusement park, because Epcot, I wouldn't call it an amusement park down there at Disney. That's kind of where they have, you go around, you tour the country. So that's not truly an amusement park. So we've never been to one. Now, she's not a big fan of them either, but still, that is a bold first date. But I guess if you're in the front row of a roller coaster, you both better like those, those Worlds of Fun type scenes.
Yeah, if you're a thrill seeker, that's probably a good first date.
I guess. And you know what? If she's in the front row, more power to her. I mean, it's not like she's crying in the back row saying, what the heck are we doing here? The reason that's dicey, though, is because the amount of fights they've had there at Worlds of Fun. Right? You have these teens getting together and starting to beat each other up out of nowhere. And that's where it's like, man, things can go sideways fast. But I guess you also could have had someone shot at the Liberty Memorial, so anything's possible. I mean, you hate to put it that way, but I'll give the kid credit,
Well, school's still in, so they're busy skipping school right now. Right.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they got other things to do, other places.
That's probably like if
once the summer rolls around is when we have the issues.
He's probably like, babe, we can go to Worlds of Fun, but we got to do it before school gets out here.
Lunchtime.
I want to know if they went on the Ferris wheel, though, the new Ferris wheel.
Oh, please. He probably saw that thing and said, what the heck is that? What am I going to look at? I-35 North? Boulevard Brewing? I mean, what are you going to look at? It's funny. We were there probably 3 weeks ago when my sister-in-law and brother-in-law and other sister-in-law came to town, and they wanted to go to Boulevard. And then, we drove by it, and the Ferris wheel's right there. You can't miss it. So Clara's like, are we going to get to go on the Ferris? What about the Ferris wheel? I'm like, nope. Out of principle, we're not going on that thing. Even if I get a free ride, I would be hesitant. She's like, whoa, that's a lot bigger than the one in Shields. I'm like, yeah, it's a lot bigger than the one in Shields. And I don't know if I trust it safety-wise either. So that's where first dates are happening at Worlds of Fun with Chiefs rookies and Sports Illustrated swimsuit models. And how many people right now are going to be standing at the Worlds of Fun entrance today, hoping to see a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model? I just bringing up the possibility. That's all I'm doing here on KCMO Talk Radio.
Take it over to Oceans of Fun.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, gosh. As we approach 7 o'clock, we told you yesterday the breaking news about how Red Lobster is filing for bankruptcy. And I just can't get enough of the story. And it's not because I get to play the Pastor Funderburk drop.
I'm not worth your Red Lobster money?
That's not the only reason. I'm fascinated by the story because, as much as I like to goof on it, it is an American institution. And we know it's been a really tough run here the last bunch of years for the restaurant industry of all shapes and sizes. So CNN, to its credit, wrote a pretty interesting piece in CNN Business about how Red Lobster's misguided endless shrimp promotion helped drive it into bankruptcy. I kid you not. The endless shrimp that came back last summer, $20 all you can eat. They thought from a business perspective that it was going to create an environment that would have more people come to the restaurant. And, they thought it would increase, they thought that they would end up getting a 20% increase in customer traffic. But the actual number was 40%. They saw a 40% increase in customer traffic thanks to the all-you-can-eat shrimp mishap from last year. Now, why? I think it's in part because of what I've told you about in the past. People that earned over six figures were suddenly going to eat at Red Lobster. They saw their highest percentage of six-figure earners going to Red Lobster over the last year because everything's gotten more expensive. So everybody is looking for deals. Everybody is looking for a place where they can go get a meal and not break the bank. So suddenly, people who earn six figures that might go to a place, a little higher end, are now going to Red Lobster. And they're stepping into this $20 all-you-can-eat shrimp. And that created a perfect storm that Red Lobster didn't see coming. So I don't want to sit here and blame necessarily Joe Biden and Bidenflation for Red Lobster going under, but I think there's a part of you that can when you really think about it. They stepped into this all-you-can-eat endless shrimp at a time when the American consumer was looking for a deal. The American consumer said, I need to find myself a deal, and I got to find it now. And Red Lobster had it. But people took advantage. And my last message would be this. I don't know what our good friend Louis Reese Zamet did with his first date where they went to eat, but I sure hope it wasn't Red Lobster, because then...
I'm not worth your Red Lobster money?
Poor guy. Oh, jeez. Poor guy. Poor guy. That's you know what? That's dump your boyfriend, dump your girlfriend material right there. You can't be going to Red Lobster on the first date. You just can't do it. I'm sorry.
I think when you're from a seafaring nation, you're probably not likely, just as you are being from the East Coast, to maybe avoid that one.
Yeah, that's true.
Go for the more local cuisine, like some barbecue.
What about McDonald's?
No, I don't want to. No.
I'm not worth your Red Lobster money?
Nope.
I'm not worth your McDonald's money?
No, come on. No way, no how. I know we've got a lot of military folks who listen here on KCMO 95.7 FM, and you can call or text at 913-408-7957. It's a tough topic, but I saw the story yesterday, and I thought to myself, gosh, I'm sure this audience will have insight on this in a way that those of us who did not serve simply can. And it's a new report out of Washington that says here, reported sexual assaults in the U.S. military have dropped. This reverses what had been a growing problem. Now, before I get to the data on this, I think generally speaking, stories like this from national media are used to make the military look bad. Make the military look like it's, in need of more DEI training and, DEI coordinators and all that nonsense and more bureaucracy and everything else. I think overwhelmingly, just like when you talk about law enforcement, 99+% of people are passionate for the right reasons, are in large part, putting their lives at risk for the betterment of their country, for the betterment of their community. And just like cops, for 99+% of people, that's true. And I always come to any story being leery of the agenda, especially when it comes from national news. But anyway, here's the data. The number of reported sexual assaults across the military decreased last year, and a confidential survey found a 19% drop in the number of service members who said they had experienced some type of unwanted sexual contact, according to new figures obtained by the Associated Press. Both are dramatic reversals from what had been a growing problem in recent years. More than 29,000 active duty service members said in the survey that they had unwanted sexual contact during the previous year, compared with nearly 36,000 in the 2021 survey, according to several defense officials. That decrease is the first one in 8 years. Now, why might that be? Well, my first thought, as the story goes on to eventually note, is that people also are more willing to maybe report some of these things. I think there's a lot of factors at play. People being more willing to report them, even when they're anonymous. I think that's absolutely true. On top of that, you also have a situation where I think that some people may misreport certain things, right? That got big over the last bunch of years. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but we know, we understand that there are people, and you can find a plethora of examples, whether it's Brett Kavanaugh or others, who will have things reported against them that are simply not true. Heck, Kansas City Chiefs, the punt god, right? The new Chiefs punter, and what he went through when he was accused of something that turned out to not be true. The Buffalo Bills cut him right as he was set to begin his NFL career. His life was ruined for a couple of years, and now he's a Kansas City Chief. And good on the Chiefs for giving this guy, Matt Araiza, a second chance. He deserves it. So there's some of that that's also going on. But senior defense officials say the assault numbers are still far too high, and there's much more work to do. But they expressed cautious optimism that the military could be turning a corner, with the help from an array of new programs and increased personnel. Sexual assaults reports in the military have gone up for much of the last decade, except for a tiny increase into 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic shutdown. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity because the report had not been publicly released. 913-408-7957. Now, what I'm curious about, and some of you are starting to text in about this, is how separate the men and women really are when you talk about the military. From training to headquarters to living spaces. Those of you who have served, you can text or call at 913-408-7957. It's easy to say separate them, and certainly there should be separation. It's only natural to separate. But how much separation is there depending on the branch that you're serving in? And what does that separation ultimately really look like? If you're talking about, some of the office side of the business, well, people having an office guy next to a gal is not all that different than, many of our day-to-day jobs, right? So that's not a big deal. But when you talk about living conditions, living locations, what that looks like when you're overseas, how does the government go about separating people? And then there's the overarching, just kind of pointing out the obvious. If we are in an environment right now where people can't even tell you what gender is what, right? And just call it like it is. People are afraid now to just say, hey, this is a man, this is a woman. Instead of living in that environment, in that world, we're all confused. I mean, I'm not confused, and most of you aren't confused, but there is confusion societally on a lot of this that also needs to be addressed. And how much is that factoring in to any decision-making that is going on? So all these things, lead me to more questions than answers. I'm glad the numbers are down on reported, inappropriate contacts between men and women in the military. I think that that's a good thing, obviously. No one would say otherwise. But then the question is why and how does it continue to decrease? And that's where I know, people who have served will have more answers than those who have not. And it's not going to be from some, guy or gal who shows up as the new DEI coordinator from some Fortune 500 company and starts putting them through, training seminars that we've all been too accustomed to going through in different lines of work. Trust me, if you work for any major corporation, you've got one. All right? Everyone's got them now. It's big money there, John. When this thing doesn't work out for me, this whole little radio thing, I'm becoming a DEI coordinator somewhere, man. That's what I'm doing.
When I hear decline of things, though, I'm also thinking about what's your target audience or population to draw from. College enrollment's on the decline. Well, so is the population base to draw from, right?
Yeah. So
I didn't know if this was a percentage or not, or whether it ties it all to declining. I mean, they're looking for people just like anybody else.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know if that affected it greatly.
It may have a little bit. 29,000 active duty members. This is just the numbers. Said in the survey they had unwanted contact over the last year. The number was 36,000 the year prior. So you're talking about a 20% decrease. I don't think they're down 20% year
No,
over
I
year.
wouldn't think so. You're right.
But they are down
a
to your
year-to-year
point.
number. Well, in general, but that would be over a bigger picture. This is showing a decrease with probably approximately the same numbers.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Pete, misreporting was a big one. This is on the text line. I think guys just stopped trying to pursue relationships with women in the military for fear of being reported from a perspective of someone who has served in the military. Like, that's tough, right? How many times do you see cops end up marrying each other? It happens. Military. A lot of military couples out there. It's natural. You're at work. If you're single, you're young, you start, meeting people from the other sex. Naturally, those relationships can occur. But if that texter is right to note out, listen, guys stopped trying to pursue relationships because they were fearful of being reported. Well, boy, that's unfortunate if you are a guy who may be pursuing somebody for the right reason and just actually trying to build a relationship. Pete, don't forget, this is what John was just noting. Enlistment numbers are down as well. That needs to be noted. Yeah, that's true. And then you want to talk about a whole nother problem we got? That's it right there. I mean, how many people not only, didn't enlist, but how many people got discharged because they wouldn't take the dopey shot that didn't work, or at least didn't prevent transmission, like is what we were told. I mean, that is something that if you want to talk about one thing the last 3 years that is just, I mean, mind-numbingly ridiculous, the fact that we fired men and women from the military.
Healthcare.
Yeah. Could you imagine young, healthy people who lost their jobs, people who served and were serving and were willing to risk their life for this country, were told to go home? And by the way, nothing to show for it, right? No pension, no nothing. Just see you later. Because you wouldn't take a shot that did not prevent transmission, which is what was promised, what we were told at the time, with the youngest, theoretically healthiest people in the country. Boy, that's one of those things that I admit I kind of forget about, but we really should not forget about. 913-4087-957. It's 9:14 on a Tuesday. It's great to be here on KCMO. Bottom of the hour, we are going to have our caller of the day here on 95.7 FM. In the meantime, did you hear some of what, and this is, never thought I'd hear this, from Bill Maher. What Bill Maher was saying last night on Fox about the state of the country, the state of the culture. Bizarre, but you know what? I give credit where it's due, and we'll get to it coming up on KCMO 95.7 FM. Bill Maher made sense. I know I said it. I can't believe it. Wrong. No, he did. He did make sense last night. I'm not usually up that late watching Gutfeld. It's on at 10 o'clock our time, so I'm fast asleep by then. But this morning I got up and I saw a bunch of the highlights of Bill Maher being on the show on Fox News, and then I watched most of it before coming on the air, and it was fantastic. I mean, he was rocking on all cylinders last night. And now he goes on, and if you go on social media, what you'll see is a lot of people talking about Bill Maher. He has his like Trump derangement syndrome moment at the end of the show. But set that aside. And by the way, that's one of those things that's not going to go away for a lot of Americans. I'm going to look at it from a positive perspective and a positive point of view. And the positive is Bill Maher realizes that the culture that people who see the world the way he does have created and what they have done to culture, society, the way they view the world, the insanely deep progressive push that they have taken on the culture and on society at large is wrong and is not sustainable. And Bill Maher is making this point. So last night they were talking about some new studies that have come out that have shown, folks, especially young people who go ahead and transition, face significantly higher suicide risks. And you're seeing many countries in the West, pump the brakes on some of this stuff, like puberty blockers for kids and things of that nature. You're seeing that a lot in Europe. Not here yet in the U.S., at least, not in many states. But you're starting to see an awakening. Once again, the pendulum swung so far in one direction, it's coming back the other way. And Bill Maher was talking about this study that's gotten a lot of attention here the last couple of days that shows the increased mental health issues and risks, especially for young people who go ahead and choose or decide or are allowed to by adults, start a transitioning process. And he pointed out what anybody with common sense has been saying for the better part of a couple of years now.
We were told that if we didn't transition kids, we had blood on our hands. And now we're finding out that it's actually the reverse, that we should actually be not doing any of it. What do you think?
I like girls.
So, does that mean you want more boys to transition to girls?
No, you're confusing him with Jim.
No, I mean, I was talking about this on my show last week. I mean, we are the outlier now, the United States. It's so funny the way sometimes the woke stuff, and I always try to make this point that liberalism is not, the same thing as woke. Woke, they would like to think they're an extension of liberalism. I'm an old school liberal. They're not. It's very often the opposite. And they think they're going so far in the right direction, and it actually turns out that they're in the wrong direction. And they've actually reversed it because most of the countries in Europe now, England, the Scandinavian countries, the ones we used to always be able to say, well, look what the liberal countries are doing. They're all reversed themselves on this. They don't do the puberty blockers anymore. They don't do this stuff because of studies like this. And America is just doubling down on this stuff. So we are the outlier country on this stuff. And look, there's always a sensible middle ground. That's what I'm always trying to find. Now, is there such a thing as trans? Of course. There are sometimes people who are, let's just say, there's a mix-up at the factory. And you don't feel in your head the way you do in your body. But some of this is also just a TikTok challenge that got out of hand.
That's exactly right. That's Bill Maher. You know, as I'm listening to him, too, he notes, like, classic liberalism is different from woke. And that's fair. Like, classic liberalism is not some of this insane stuff that, of course, is becoming more mainstream. But I would challenge, and that's where I think, you know, both parties need to beat out the extremes in many respects. Like, you know, Republicans are always shamed into saying, hey, you know, you got some racists in your party. You gotta shame them. And I think any racist should be shamed. By the way, I think there are racists in both parties. I think there are people who are racist against minorities who may define themselves as Republicans. I think that's true. But I think there's also people who hate white people who are racist and identify as Democrats. I think there are people who hate Jews for no other reason than they're Jewish who identify as Democrats. And by the way, there are anti-Semites who identify as Republicans as well. And both parties needs to stomp out the crazy. And right now, if you look at those two parties, when it comes to some of those issues like race and things of that nature and gender, Democrats got to get rid of their crazy. I mean, when Bill Maher is your voice of reason saying, hey, guys, like, this is nuts. Let's just get back to a world where there's classic liberalism and classic conservatism and have those like policy debates and policy conversations and not literally advocate for children to get castrated, we'll be better off as a country. But that's where you get into this concerning place where so many people no longer want to see America thrive, and they can create chaos and sow division with some of these insane conversations, whether it's on, you know, how to treat policing, right, going back a few years, whether it's, you know, what identifies a child, what doesn't, what a child should be allowed to do, what a child should not be allowed to do, what's going on right now on college campuses the last bunch of weeks. All that stuff does weave together because it's all about hating America and hating what America stands for. Like, I don't think Bill Maher hates America. I think he's wrong on a lot of stuff, like just like, you know, how he sees the future of the country. But I don't think Bill Maher hates America. I think Bill Maher, you know, realizes what America and the land of the free and the home of the brave has done for him. Obviously, it's made him a very wealthy and famous man. And I think that Bill Maher does, while he's probably not going to, you know, wave the red, white, and blue Old Glory anytime soon, I think he respects that and understands that deep down. I don't question whether or not Bill Maher appreciates America, loves America. But for a lot of people who have gone, as he put it, woke versus liberal, I'm not convinced they like America. They don't. And there's new polling data that suggests that's really concerning, says especially young people, they're not digging America. This poll was just done here. I'm looking at it. Came from... want to make sure I get the organization right. Who is it here? Ethics and Public Policy Center. And here's the values by generation. Gen Z, ages 18 to 26. What do they think of America? What percentage of that generation believes the following things are very important? Patriotism, only 32%. Belief in God and religion, 26%. Having children, 23%. Do they agree that America is the best place to live? Only 33% believe that right now of Gen Z. And while I know people change as they get older, that's something that has got to be changed as soon as possible because we are on the cusp of having what will be the most anxious, godless, childless, and rootless generation running the future. And that's a concerning thought.